Yeah. Welcome to Two Gals in a Glass Half Full. We are Dr. Jess and Dr. Bobby, two physical therapists just trying to live healthy most of the time and seeing our glasses as half full. Some days that is much harder than others. So we like to interview others more knowledgeable than us on topics so we can learn more. And this month we are talking about relationships. And so I'm super excited about this first one. But Dr. Jess, what do we have in your glass today?
So in my glass, I have water. I've been really terrible about drinking water this whole week almost. It's like it's awful. So today I made a pact with myself that I'm going to finish this before lunch, and it's now the end of the day, and I actually still have this much left because I'm supposed to have two of these done, but that's okay because I have had not no water. I have had some, so that's where we are today. So, Dr. Bobby, what's in your glass?
I have my one a day Diet Coke, so
yep,
savoring the one can.
I'll take it. And today we have Jackie with us. And first, I'm going to let Jackie do a little bit of an introduction of her background and training and all that fun stuff. But first, Jackie, what's in your glass?
I have water as well. It's condensating on the glass, but yeah, I have water. I'm also trying to be more mindful and drinking more water throughout my day. So that's what's in my glass tonight.
Yeah. I like it. And so Jackie, tell us a little bit about, your background and what you do. Because I think it's super interesting.
Yeah. So hi guys, my name is Jackie Ivy. I am something in Florida, it's called a registered mental health counselor intern. And essentially what that means is I'm getting licensed to be a therapist. So I currently, I guess to give a little bit about like my educational background, I went to Penn State for my undergrad degree, and I graduated with a degree in rehabilitation and human services. And then I minored in special education. And then I took a year off from school and I worked, and then I went back to school. I went to grad school at Johns Hopkins University in Baltimore, and I got my master's of science in clinical mental health counseling. I didn't stay in Baltimore for long after graduation. I relocated to Jacksonville Beach, Florida, which is where I currently live. And then I am now working at Soft Roast Recovery, which primarily treats addictions. So I'm an addiction specialist and primary therapist there. But we also, kind of treat dual diagnoses. So like anxiety, depression, those types of things. And my role within that space is I'm an individual therapist and I'm also a group therapist. So I'm responsible for several groups a week. And actually one of them being relationships and communication. So I love this topic so much, and I'm so passionate about, learning more myself, and then also providing other people with just more information about, relationships, relationship barriers, love languages, communication styles, how to communicate, and all that kind of good stuff. So that's a little bit of my background and kind of my past and where I am now.
Yeah, I love that. Yeah, you're kind of the perfect person to kick off our month of relationships.
Yes.
Which is why we're like, hey, like, would you come on and talk with us? So when we're talking this episode, our biggest question with this episode is understanding more about love languages. It's something that I didn't honestly appreciate as much as I probably could have when I was younger. And it's really helped me not only understand just communication within my marriage, but also like other people that have a different love language than me, that are like friends and family, that I had a tendency to perceive something as maybe not like I didn't understand it, and I might have put a little judgment onto that. I did put judgment onto that. I'm gonna own it. I did, and have more than once. And the more that I started to understand that, the more that it helped me understand other people and and that has been healthier. So I think hopefully we can share some of this knowledge with others, and they can use it to maybe learn about themselves and other people in their lives.
Definitely.
Yeah.
So do you want me to jump right in, or do you?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So let's talk about
Tell us a little bit about what are love languages.
Yeah, that was going to be my first kind of point of going in the direction of the conversation. So what are love languages? So there are 5 love languages out there. So it's physical touch, acts of service, words of affirmation, gifts, and quality time. So those are the 5 different like categories, as you will. So people are like, well, how do I know what mine are? Well, luckily, there are tons of assessments that you can take online. It's like questions, and then you get percentages of like, where you are in each love language. So I know mine personally is words of affirmation. I've done that for a while. Like, I'm a words person. I like to feel like, getting the I love yous and I miss yous and you look nice today and oh, that looks good. And like, I'm definitely a words person. My lowest, I think, is gifts. And so I think me having that awareness, I was like, okay, that totally makes sense to me, because I also give love in words, right? Like I will sometimes, so I'm sorry, let me backtrack. So when you know what your love language is, right? It's how we give and receive love to and from people. And I really appreciate love language, because language to me means like communication, and communication means like how we're giving and how we're presenting and how we're kind of showing or demonstrating or communicating something, right? So it's how we're communicating a care for, a love toward, an appreciation for somebody that we're in a relationship with. And this goes beyond, intimate romantic relationships. These are friendships, family members, coworkers even. So anyway, so once you know what your love language is, you have a better understanding of like, okay, this is how I receive and give love, right? And I think it's important, like I know in my personal, like I'm just gonna use my intimate relationships, like I'm always like, so do you know what your love language is? And sometimes people know and sometimes people don't. But I think that allows for an understanding of like, okay, say mine's words and say my partner's is like physical touch. And if they, kind of hold my hands a lot or show me a lot of public display of affection or sit close to me on the couch, like that's them showing me love, but I may not be aware of that. And so I'm not necessarily receiving that as being like, oh, this is them showing that they love me, right? Or that they care for me. This is just something that they're doing, right? Whereas if I had the awareness as to, oh, there's this physical touch, right? Then I would understand that, okay, this is how they're demonstrating and communicating to me how they feel. Whereas having that awareness too is like, I can be more mindful in that, like they probably would like to receive physical touch, and they probably receive physical touch in the way of, whatever that may mean to them. So, and that's lower, I think, on my scale. So I would have to really increase my mindfulness and be like, okay, like I know that there's this physical touch. So it's taking the extra step and kind of putting in more effort in regards to making sure that you're showing them some type of physical affection. Whereas for them to be aware of words, for me, they know that, either complimenting me or telling me something will probably show to me that they love me or that they care for me or whatever it may be. So it also allows like for your individual needs to be met within the relationship, which I think is a really important thing. Like, what are your needs within a relationship? Outside of the love languages too, but I think within them that helps you and your, with it, people within your interpersonal relationships to meet that.
So for those that may have like never heard of love languages before, could you tell us a little bit like what is acts of service versus quality time versus like what are the differences between those?
Yeah, so acts of service is like doing little like chores, if you will. Like I'm gonna probably just give a couple examples of each one.
Yeah.
So be like unloading the dishwasher, or like cleaning your car, or picking up the groceries, or tidying up around the house without asking. So like that's like an act of service. Quality time is like you really just spending time, you and that other person. Gifts is like buying gifts, right? So like it can be little things. It doesn't necessarily have to be like big, extravagant gifts. It could be like buying you, and I think some of them kind of do overlap, right? Like say somebody goes to the store and brings back a bouquet of flowers or something, that's kind of a mixture between like a gift and an act of service, if you will. So some of them might kind of intertwine, but gifts is pretty much, giving somebody some type of item, or, it can be little, big, small, whatever it might be. What am I missing?
Physical touch and words of affirmation.
Yeah. So physical touch is, usually like I gave a couple of examples, but like holding hands, sitting closely together, physical intimacy, like in the bedroom, if you will, things of that nature. It can also be just like hugging, putting your hand on somebody like this, kind of going that extra step of actually having a physical touch with somebody. And then words of affirmation is, things that you say through your words. So say you're dating somebody, or say it's like a family member who lives far away, right? Like really having the words of like, I've been thinking about you and I miss you. And, I've really been wondering how you're doing. Like those are just a few examples of words. Or like, hey, I saw this thing today and thought about you. Just wanted to say hi and that I miss you, or something like that. So those would be kind of my personal examples of it.
Yeah.
But some of them do intertwine and interlap, and usually ones that are pretty similar, you might score like closer to those in regards to like percentages.
Yeah, I think that it's not, sometimes it seems like, oh, it's just going to be like, I have one love language is what, when you first start to hear about it. And it's like, not really, like like who doesn't at some point in time, like everybody wants to like have somebody say something nice about them and or do like a nice thing for them, or, like, so they're all positive. It's just at what point do you rate that positivity? And then with the understanding of that individual and with their intention behind it, or your intention behind it, whatever that might be. I think that was one of my bigger realizations when I started like learning about it more, because I was thinking of like one or the other, this or that, instead of like across the board. How does that all balance out with how you relate with somebody else?
And the assessments that I have given people, or I've taken myself, they rank it on like a percentage. And I think that's really important to think of it, and not like all or nothing, but it's like, okay, I'm either this one or I'm that one. I think a lot of times like, we go to very like binary places of like this or that. And I like everything, not everything, but a lot of things are like a spectrum. So it's going to be like a different percentage, or a different, like, even though I know my top one, like I scored, I think like 60% or 62% of words of affirmation, right? Like the one right below that for me was quality time. And it was like still, like in the 20s or something. Like it was still a percentage, like that still mattered to me to a degree. It just was a little bit, I think 60 might have been high, but it was just a little bit lower than the others. And then it kind of trickles down in regards to percentages. So of course, like I think everybody values all 5 things within the love language. I think it's just which one is really significant for you, and like how that plays out within your relationship, and also how you show up within the relationship as well.
Yeah.
I know when I've taken,
go ahead.
Oh, I was gonna say, I know when I've taken the test, I have 3 that are like almost kind of similar, and then 2 that are, much lower, significantly lower, but it's hard. Like those 3 are very, very similar. It's like you're talking a few percentages difference. And so they really can overlap a lot.
Yeah, absolutely. And some people, it's like out of the park, out of the water, like one is significantly higher. And for other people, it's going to be a little bit of, maybe a little mixture of everything. So everybody is individual and unique and different. And so that's why I think it's important to, be aware of kind of where you are on that spectrum, if you will. And also in turn, like where others within your life whether that be like romantic or not, where they stand as well.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think this plays out for me where I started becoming sensitive to it outside of like a, a relationship with a significant other, but more of that, like, just friends and family, is I would always get really stressed out before Christmas with this like obligatory gift buying, because I'm not like gifts are like low on my love language, really low, like lowest.
Yeah.
I'm much more acts of service, words of affirmation, that's and quality time. I'm kind of like Bobby. I've got 3 that are just really, really close. And then it just like drops real like that buying gifts drops real low. So for me to go to the store and buy an obligatory gift, I consider obligatory.
Yep.
That's my consideration of obligatory. It's it was just like I was feeling like this isn't really, and the intention behind this isn't there, and that that's not really what I want. And so I started to try and better understand who I was working with, and if I've got somebody in my family that is also low on gift giving, which is why when I do my best to buy something, it ends up just like never being used, and I'm like, then what are we doing here? Then it's like, what if we all just come together and say like, let's say that we're going to like carve out time that we're going to spend together around the holidays. Does that work for you? Yeah, that works for me. Great. Now all of a sudden, all this obligation, we started to shed the obligation. We started really working on those interpersonal relationships with like very specific family members of like, this is like, for us, we really want to make sure that like time is big and we want that time if that works well for you. But if gift giving really is your thing, we don't want to be disrespectful of that either, and having those conversations. And it's like, oh my gosh, the holidays are so much more fun now.
Yeah. I also
Yeah.
feel like for me, as I've gotten older, I've really found ways to wrap like my words into my gifts. Like that may sound weird, but I've always been one to try to do something like super thoughtful behind my gifts. And I in a previous long distance relationship, my gift to him for the holidays was open when letters. And I created 12 of them. And it would be like, open when, you miss me, or when you're hungry. And in each one, I wrote a letter. And I included like something small, like, I don't know, like a Chick-fil-A gift card or a Southwest gift card or something small like that, or like open when you're feeling stressed, and it was like a face mask or chapstick or something like that. So I really found a way to kind of incorporate both, which I thought was really cool. And that was actually a really fun process. Like I was so excited to give that gift. I was like itching Christmas, and I was like, oh my gosh, I just want him to open it so bad. And it was honestly hands down like probably my most proud, well-received gift I've probably ever given. Now, my mom, her like top love language, hi mom, if you're watching this ever, is gifts. And so she's always been really, really mindful around the holidays of like making sure she gets gifts like for everyone, like even people that would deliver our mail or our neighbors that we barely knew. And she always like really went all out in terms of like giving gifts. And she does that, throughout the year. Like she'll send me a little like Starbucks gift card or just send me something small. And I know that for her is like, okay, her showing her love. And I think sometimes like gifts of just like, I don't miss like a materialistic thing, but I've never really, that really hasn't really resonated for me personally. So sometimes I'd be like, yeah, this is cool. And like, I appreciate it. And I think if the gift maybe, I don't know how to explain that. Like when you know that there's a little bit something like deeper there, I think for me, who somebody is such like a words person, I'm like, okay, whoa, like that was really meaningful. But it's to my mom, right? Like giving that Starbucks gift card, what is meaningful, right? It's just the way that we're receiving it.
Right.
So I'm glad that you brought that up, especially around the holidays and how, it's going to look and be different for different family members, different people, and being able to come together and recognize like we can do both, right? Like we can create space and time for people that really value the quality time and the words and do that. And then for people who are more, gifts and that kind of thing, like we can also create space and time for both things.
Yeah. And I think, yeah, knowing the love languages. So my mom is a gift person too, and I know my mom will listen to this. So, and it's just not mine as much. I love giving them, but like receiving them is not quite as some other things. But to me, it really helped me, even with like when people give compliments, to like not turn them down, you know, or like to really be like, thank you, like just to like understand that they're trying to show their appreciation, their love. And if you're like, oh, like, no, I don't think so, or I didn't need that, like you're almost like turning, you know, like turning their love away. So understanding that really helped me be able to receive stuff better and to show my thankfulness in receiving that.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I think that that's a really good point too. And sometimes when I don't want to say like shy away from, but I think my mind's going to like physical touch now. Sorry, it's like going all over the place. But if somebody's a physical touch person and trying to like hold your hand and just say like you're unintentionally like on your phone or just not paying attention and you kind of like brush your hand away or do something small like that might feel really hurtful to that person and be like, wow, like, okay, you kind of just dismissed my love that I was trying to show you or something like that. And we're kind of doing that unintentionally, right? Like, so we do so much on autopilot. And I think this is where I want to like wrap in the facet of like mindfulness and being really aware of how we're presenting and like what we're doing within our relationships, what we're saying, how we're saying it, what's our body language, you know, and do we have an awareness to that and the impact that that really does have. And so I think that that's a really beautiful example of how, yeah, like unintentionally we can do things that might hurt or not feel good for other people. And so I think raising the awareness around that is super important.
I definitely agree with that.
Yeah. Another big area is like when people try to help too, you know, acts of service, like they want to help you and you're like, oh no, I got it. I can do it. I don't need help. I got it, you know, and it's just us trying to not inconvenience them and not, you know, put anything on them. But I think it's also important to realize like maybe that's what they really want to do. And maybe they really want to be there to help.
Yeah.
I think better understanding. I try and it's like you gotta be careful like who you put your trust into, right? So it's like I always try and read that audience and try and get at least, because not all of the people in your life, like some of your friends that aren't like super close, you might not be able to say, what's your love language? So that I better can understand how to communicate with you. They're gonna be like, you're so weird. Like, what are you saying? like, yeah, I could probably have said that in a different way. So I've tried to like, just like over time, just kind of see what they receive versus what they give and just kind of, and I know it is kind of making an assumption, but it helps me be more sensitive to not turning that away. I guess if that's you know, like that, you know, like maybe it's like, hey, how can I help you or whatever that might be.
Yeah.
But that really might be like meaningful versus like obligatory. You know, it's like if I look really busy and somebody that doesn't really want to help says, hey, I'd like to help. I'm like, oh, well, you could do this. And then they give you that look of like, oh, she actually took me up on it.
Yeah.
Now I have a learning process that's happened. So now I've learned, oh, don't do that. Right. So, and I've had a tendency in the past where like, I'll learn it quick. Don't worry. I've learned. Okay. So just don't receive help because it wasn't well received. Like that didn't go well. And then it's like, well, okay, so I need to be better about in like mindfulness being what's my intention in the moment. Who am I working with? This might not be a repeated event, you know, and just like all of those like lines of thought that start going to like try and be present with whomever I'm speaking with and try and receive when I can. And if not, if it is just like a comment, then say, oh, you're good, don't worry about it, and you know, keep on going.
Yeah, I was gonna say like I'm pretty assertive in like my communication and like, you know, newly beginning to like date again and whatever that means. Date meaning like, I mean, I'm single now, but you know, date even just like find new friends, you know, like I kind of have this like very wide like definition of like what is dating, right? Like meeting new friends, meeting new people, building relationships toward people. Like, I think it's just interesting to sometimes be like, so like, have you ever heard of love languages? Like, what are your thoughts on it? But these are types of questions that I kind of just ask out front because I'm kind of assertive in that way. And I'm like, well, they're either going to think I'm wacky and be like, all right, I'm never hanging out with her again. Or they're going to be like, no, what is that? And then it kind of like, it's a cool conversation starter. And I think we oftentimes do make assumptions on things, right? And that can be very unintentional as well. But I think for there to be like a clear understanding of like, and maybe people don't even are aware of what a love language is or what they are, right? And so that's opportunity to really like share and to teach and to learn and like, just kind of explore that within dating or within current relationships or with friends or whatever it might be. So I think that being in that exploration, curiosity, phase is really fun and can really actually be a good conversation starter. Whereas like if we kind of ask like, and I think too though, if that may feel a bit intimidating for people to just kind of outright be like, okay, so have you ever heard of love languages? It can be like, okay, well, what can I do to support you today? And if they say like, do you want to come over and just like hang out on the couch? Like, okay, like that may be a quality time, like buzzer. Or, do you want to, like, I don't know, go pick up trash at the beach this weekend or something like that. Like that may be like a more acts of service thing. So I definitely feel like you can get feelers.
Right.
But again, I think since some of them can overlap and be very close to one another, I think it's just fun to bring it out in the open and be kind of like assertive with it. Not aggressive, being like, what's your language, love language? Just like asking and really asking from a place of like genuinely like wanting to know. And I think that builds like comfort and safety within conversations too, when you build the space where it feels safe and comfortable to talk about it. Because if it kind of comes off of like, oh, well, why are you asking me that? I think a big one is like what's your astrological sign? Like a lot of people are like, oh, that makes sense as to why you're a Gemini or something like that, or whatever it is, I think people sometimes steer away from those types of things because they're like, oh, that's going to form like some type of like judgment, or that's going to form some type of like assumption or how I operate or something like that. But this is a little bit more like light and fun, and it's just like a way to understand one another better.
Right. Yeah. And I think it is, for me, it's been very helpful to not only apply it, to apply it outside of relationships. It really makes a difference, a big difference in friendships and family relationships as well. It's one of the things that like oftentimes like I feel like my family, like we've known them for so long, but when somebody new comes in, that it's like all of a sudden, if that person is a little bit different than our normative of what, the people that have been, like someone marries in or something like that, it's like, how do I best receive this person? And I've gotten better at that. And not that I don't feel like, horrible or anything like that, but just like really like, how do we receive somebody into the family, and how do we receive that and make sure that they're as comfortable as possible, and in a safe place, so that it's not this like judgmental, like kind of, whatever that might mean. So that's all part of holiday preparation. But I mean, it's not just holidays. It's any time of the year where this is a conversation, but we really wanted to put this during the holiday season. So that way it's up in front, in center, hopefully, having listened to it recently to help with some sensitivity with moving forward. Yeah. So Jackie, we really very much appreciate you coming on and talking to us about love languages and kicking off our relationship month here in November. So everybody else that's listening, please follow us on, the podcast is on Spotify and Apple Podcasts. So if you subscribe, then you'll get the updated releases each time, so you'll never miss an episode, which is great. And we're also on social media, so we try and make sure we've got content that's out there that's relevant and in line with what we're talking about that month. We do have a closed community that's on Facebook, and that one, it's where we can, you know, just have a little bit more control, making sure that it's nice and positive. We can kick people out if anybody's negative, which we haven't had to do, which is great. But we will if we have to. And then our membership is now live. And so you can find out more on our website. Now all the information will be linked below. So, all right, everybody, we look forward to next week and learning a little bit more about relationships.